Elara's breath caught, tears surging. The figure was gaunt, ribs jutting through thin skin, lips cracked and dry. But there was no mistaking it. Human. Rourke lowered the rifle an inch, shock cutting through his hardened face. "Impossible," he muttered. The figure groaned, a dry rasp, and whispered one broken word, "Help!" Elara fell to her knees, reaching for him before she even thought to stop herself. Her hands brushed skin, hot with fever. Alive, against all odds, alive. But Rourke didn't move closer. He kept the rifle trained, suspicion etched deep in his eyes. Or its bait. Elara pressed trembling hands to the figure's fever-hot skin, but Rourke's voice cut through the moment, hard and unyielding. "Step back," he ordered, rifle never wavering. She looked up at him, eyes wide, glassy with tears. "He's alive, Rourke. He's human. Look at him." Rourke's jaw clenched. "I'm looking, and all I see is bait. The thing messes with our heads, makes us see what it wants. You think it wouldn't dress itself up in something helpless to reel us in?" The gaunt figure coughed weakly, lips cracking further, a whimper escaping. Elara leaned closer, gripping his hand as if to anchor him to life. "That's not a hallucination. Feel his pulse. It's real." Rourke didn't budge. "Or it's something wearing a pulse. You didn't see what it did to Ortiz, how it played him until he tore his own throat open. We can't trust this." Her voice shook, but steel hid beneath it. "If it's a trick, then it's already inside us. But if it's real and we walk away, then we've given up the last of who we are." Rourke's eyes flicked to her, sharp, pained. "Compassion gets you killed in here. And suspicion leaves us nothing worth saving," she shot back, surprising even herself with the heat in her words. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other, the weight of the argument heavy in the sterile room. Then Elara broke the standoff. She slid an arm under the frail man's shoulders, lifting him carefully despite Rourke's low growl of warning. "I won't abandon him," she whispered. The figure clung weakly to her shirt, fingers trembling like dry leaves in the wind. Rourke swore under his breath, rifle still trained on the survivor, even as Elara pulled him upright. "One wrong move," he muttered, "and I put him down." Elara didn't look at him. She couldn't. If she did, she might see the truth in his words. Mason's head throbbed as if a drill bit were burrowing behind his eyes. The whispers wouldn't stop, threading through the silence like fine wires pulled too tight. "Killed him. You killed him. And now he'll never let you go." He pressed his palms over his ears, rocking forward on his knees. "You're not real. You're not real." But then he heard it, a scrape, barely audible, like a fingernail dragging across the floor. He froze, eyes wide. The body hadn't moved, but its arm was in a different position. He was sure of it. "No," Mason breathed. His own voice cracked. "No, I saw you." The head turned, just a fraction, a dead weight rolling against metal, but enough to send Mason scrambling backward until his shoulders slammed the bulkhead. The mouth moved, slow, stiff, and though no sound came from the lips, Mason heard it as clearly as if it were whispered into his ear. "You should have been the one to die." His scream tore loose before he could stop it, echoing down the corridor. The pipe lay only a few feet away, but Mason didn't reach for it. He pressed himself against the wall, nails clawing the metal, breath ragged. His mind split between two realities, one where Cade was just a corpse on the floor and one where the thing inside him had decided to wake. He no longer knew which one was worse. Mason's chest heaved, each breath catching in his throat. The shadows seemed to lean closer, their edges trembling like heat distortion. He rubbed his eyes, hard until they burned. But when he lowered his hands, the body was sitting upright. He froze. Cade, no, what was left of him, sat propped against the wall, head lolling to one side, empty eyes glinting in the dim light. His lips were stretched into something like a grin, too wide, too brittle. Mason's scream caught in his chest, strangled. His body wouldn't move. Then the grin twitched, cracked wider, and the voice slipped into Mason's ear again. "You'll never leave me, Mason. Never." A sob tore free as he lunged for the pipe, fingers slipping on the slick handle. He swung wildly, smashing it against the corpse's chest. Bone crunched, the body slumped sideways, grin gone, just dead weight again. Mason staggered back, sweat soaking his shirt, pipe clattering from his numb hand. He couldn't tell anymore what was real, if he'd imagined the grin, the whisper, the movement. His body trembled violently, every nerve screaming. The ship pulsed beneath him, slow and steady, like it was savoring his collapse. For the first time, Mason whispered aloud the thought that had been crawling at the edges of his mind since Cade's death. Maybe I'm already gone. And in the suffocating silence that followed, he almost believed it. Ilara pressed a hand against the glass, her breath fogging the surface. The survivor on the other side looked even weaker up close, skin ashen, lips trembling. She couldn't hear his words clearly through the barrier, but she saw him mouth the same plea again and again. "Help me." Rourke's voice was low, hard. "It's a trick." Ilara spun on him, frustration flaring. "He's human, Rourke. Look at him. He's starving. He's terrified." "Exactly," Rourke said, his eyes narrowing. "Too perfect. You think it's a coincidence we find someone alive right when we're at the breaking point? The ship wants you to open that door." Ilara's pulse pounded. She hated him for saying it, because a part of her couldn't dismiss the thought. But the survivor's sunken eyes, his skeletal frame, those felt real. Too real. If we leave him here, he'll die. And if we let him out, we die. The survivor lifted a trembling hand, pressing it against the glass as if he could feel their warmth through it. His lips formed another word, Ilara's name. Her chest clenched. She hadn't told him who she was. Rourke's jaw tightened, his hand moving closer to the grip of his weapon. "You saw that, didn't you?" Ilara's throat dried. It could be coincidence. But even as she said it, doubt bled through her voice. Ilara's breath shook as she pressed closer to the glass. The survivor's lips kept forming her name, weak, barely shaping the syllables. "He knows me, Rourke. He knows me." Rourke's face hardened, lines cutting deeper into his expression. "Exactly. That's the problem. Nobody down here should know you. Nobody should even be alive." She spun on him, fire flashing through her exhaustion. Maybe he heard us. Maybe he's been awake, listening, waiting for someone to come. Rourke shook his head slowly, almost pitying. "No, you're letting it play you. That thing has been twisting us since the first scream. You don't think it'd burrow into your head, dig up a name, toss it back at you to watch you crumble?" Ilara's jaw locked. She wanted to deny it, but her stomach churned because he was right. It could do that. She knew it. And still, the survivor raised his hand again, palm trembling against the glass. His lips moved once more. "Please." Ilara's throat tightened. Compassion flared hotter than reason. "If we shut this door on him, we're no better than the thing that's hunting us." Rourke's voice dropped, soft but razor-edged. "And if we open it, we might be feeding it." They stood locked in silence, the hiss of the vents the only sound between them. The decision weighed heavier than either wanted to admit, pressing like a vice. Finally, Ilara whispered, almost to herself, "I won't leave him." Rourke cursed under his breath, stepping closer, rifle steady. "Then you'd better be ready to put him down if he isn't what he looks like." Ilara's hand hovered near the release mechanism. Her chest heaved. This wasn't just a choice, it was a line in the sand. Her hand hovered for just one more breath, trembling, before she slammed the release. The cabinet hissed as pressure equalized, metal grinding back. The door swung wide and the survivor slumped forward into her arms, weightless as paper. His skin burned hot under her grip, damp with fever sweat. He groaned, lips brushing her ear. "Ilara." She swallowed hard, tightening her hold. "I've got you. You're safe." Rourke's rifle stayed locked on the figure, his knuckles white against the grip. "Don't believe a damn word." The survivor sagged against Ilara, trembling, breath ragged and shallow. He was too weak to stand, too frail to fight. His hand found her wrist, clutching with surprising strength for just a heartbeat. And in that heartbeat, she felt it. A shiver, something wrong in his touch. Too cold beneath the fever, too sharp, like nails pressing deeper than flesh should. Her eyes flicked to his face. He was still gaunt, sunken, desperate, still human. But the doubt bloomed, cold and sharp in her gut. Rourke caught the flicker in her expression. His voice was iron. You feel it too. Elara hesitated, just long enough for the survivor's grip to tighten again. The survivor sagged heavily in Elara's arms, ribs sharp under her grip, feverish breath hot against her neck. His weight didn't feel right. Not just frail, but hollow, as if there was less body than there should have been. Rourke stepped closer, rifle never wavering. He's wrong, you can feel it. Elara's jaw tightened. She wanted to scream at him, deny it, insist this man was real, but her skin prickled where his fingers dug into her wrist. Too cold beneath the sweat, too steady like a pulse that wasn't quite human. The survivor shuddered suddenly, eyes flicking open wider than before. They found hers, desperate, raw. "Don't let him kill me," he rasped, voice cracking. "I'm real, I swear." Elara's throat closed. Her heart said yes, her gut screamed no. Rourke's finger brushed the trigger. If he's real, he can prove it. Ask him something only a human would know. Elara stared down at the figure in her arms, the question on her lips faltering. What could she even ask? The survivor coughed, lips trembling. "Please, please don't leave me here." It was the same plea as before, but this time it sounded practiced. The sound chilled her more than the fever ever could. The survivor's trembling plea hung between them, words sinking like hooks into Elara's chest. Rourke's finger tightened fractionally on the trigger, one breath more and the decision would snap. Then, a scream ripped through the corridors, distant, ragged, echoing, but sharp enough to freeze them both. Mason. Elara's head whipped toward the sound. The survivor sagged against her, moaning faintly as if in sympathy, his grip tightening again. Rourke cursed, eyes narrowing. "That's him, he's not far." Elara's pulse thundered. Mason's voice was raw with terror, and the sound carried the weight of something breaking beyond repair. But the survivor's fingers still clutched her wrist. He whimpered again, feeble but insistent, dragging her back down into his presence. Rourke growled low, swinging his rifle toward the corridor. "We don't have time for this." Elara stood frozen, torn between two impossible pulls, the friend screaming for his life in the dark, and the broken man she refused to abandon. The ship seemed to breathe around them, savoring her hesitation. The scream bled through the bulkheads again, closer this time. Mason's voice cracked on the last note, dissolving into a guttural sob that scraped along the metal. Elara's knees weakened. "He's in trouble." The survivor twitched in her arms, clutch tightening, whispering brokenly, Don't leave me." His lips brushed her ear, the words damp and trembling. Rourke's snarl cut through it. "If we stay here, he dies. If we drag that thing along, maybe we all die." The scream came once more, then cut off, abrupt, choked. Silence flooded in after, heavier than before. Elara's eyes darted between the survivor's pale face and the corridor where Mason's voice had disappeared. Her heart pounded so loud it drowned everything else. The ship seemed to lean in, savoring her torment, the air thick with expectation. She couldn't hold the line much longer. Elara's breath tore from her chest. Mason's scream still rang in her ears, cut short too fast, too brutally. The survivor clutched her harder, nails scraping her wrist. His eyes rolled with fever, mouth trembling, whispering the same plea. "Don't leave me." Rourke's rifle dipped toward the corridor. His voice was iron, final. "Choose, now." Elara's body shook, torn between the weight in her arms and the silence pressing down the hall. Her heart screamed one answer, her gut another. Her lips cracked, dry and shaking. I can't." But her hands betrayed her. With a cry that ripped her open, she shoved the survivor back through the door and slammed it shut. The lock hissed, metal sealing with a finality that echoed in her bones. The survivor's face twisted, no longer frail, no longer pleading, but cold and sharp in the flicker of the light. His hand smacked the glass, palm flat, eyes burning with something other. Elara staggered back, trembling. Rourke grabbed her shoulder, yanking her toward the corridor. "Move, now." And together, they plunged into the dark, where Mason's scream had died, the ship groaning around them like it was laughing. Elara's hands still shook as she ran, every step echoing with the slam of the lock. She could feel the survivor's palm against the glass burning into her memory. The look in his eyes, frail one second, inhuman the next, clung to her like frost. She told herself she'd made the right choice. Mason needed her. Mason was real. But the truth gnawed at her. She had abandoned someone who begged for her help. Whether it was a trick or not, she'd shoved a human shape back into the dark. Rourke didn't slow. His voice was flat, grating. "You saved us. Don't waste time doubting it." Elara wanted to believe him, but the words rang hollow. Another corridor loomed, shadows yawning open like jaws. Somewhere ahead, Mason's scream had died into silence. Elara gritted her teeth and forced her legs to move faster, guilt a blade in her ribs. "We find him. We don't leave him." Rourke's grunt was her only answer, and so they pushed deeper into the ship's throat, chasing silence that felt heavier than any scream. Mason lay curled in the shadows, chest heaving, the taste of copper thick in his mouth. He hadn't meant to scream, it had just torn out of him when the walls seemed to move. He could swear the corridor had narrowed while he staggered through it, panels buckling inward, light stretching long and thin until the world funneled around him like a throat. His mind buzzed with voices, not words, not really, whispers that rode the edge of hearing, brushing his thoughts until he couldn't tell if they came from outside or from the marrow of his own bones. "They left you. They always leave you." He clamped his hands over his ears, but the voices seeped through, soft and steady. Then the dark shifted. Ahead, just beyond the flicker of the failing lights, a figure stood. Not the creature, not the warped thing he'd half glimpsed before. This shape was human, familiar. "Lena," Mason whispered, voice cracking. His sister's name, torn from somewhere buried deep. The figure didn't answer, just stood there, head tilted, hands at her sides. Tears burned his eyes. "You're not here," he choked. "You're not real." But she was. She looked real. And that was worse. He stumbled forward, breath shaking, desperate to prove it false, to rip away the mask. His hand reached out. And the light stuttered once, then steadied. The corridor was empty. Mason dropped to his knees, sobs choking in his throat. The silence after his scream felt endless, a void pressing him down. Mason's palms pressed flat to the deck, sweat slicking his skin. His breath came in ragged bursts, each inhale scraping his throat raw. The silence clawed at him worse than the whispers, a silence so deep it felt alive. Then, softly, a new sound. "Mason." He froze. The voice was warm, familiar, his mother's voice, gentle as the bedtime stories she used to tell. He shook his head hard, tears streaking down his cheeks. "You're dead. You've been dead for years." But the voice came again, closer now. "No, baby, I'm right here. You don't have to be afraid." Mason's hands curled into fists. He wanted to shut it out, to refuse, but every word reached into the child still buried in him. A shadow shifted at the end of the corridor. She was there. His mother, standing tall and smiling faintly, eyes kind. His chest caved with a sob. "Please, don't do this. Don't use her." The figure opened its arms. "Come to me." Mason staggered upright, legs trembling, torn between fleeing and running toward her. The corridor tilted with his motion, lights sputtering as though the ship itself was leaning into the trick. He reached out a hand, just one step from the phantom embrace. "Mason." Elara's voice, sharp, real. He blinked. The figure was gone, only shadows remained. Mason crumpled, gasping, as Elara and Rourke burst into the corridor, weapons raised, eyes wide. Elara dropped to her knees beside him, hands gripping his shoulders. "Mason, look at me. What happened?" His eyes darted over her shoulder to the empty corridor where the phantom had stood. His throat worked, words caught between shame and fear. He couldn't say it, couldn't admit that he'd almost walked into the arms of something that wasn't real. "I thought I saw something," he muttered, voice low, shaky, just the dark playing tricks. Rourke crouched close, rifle never lowering. His stare was hard, weighing Mason's words. "That wasn't just a scream for shadows." Mason swallowed, shaking his head quickly. "It's fine. I'm fine." Elara's grip on him tightened, her eyes searching his. She didn't believe him, not entirely, but she wanted to. Rourke's jaw flexed, but he let it drop for now. Fine or not, we move. This place is bleeding into us. Stand up, Mason. Mason obeyed, legs trembling, heart hammering. He kept his eyes low, hiding the truth. But inside, the phantom's voice still lingered, soft and sweet. Come to me. Rourke kept his rifle raised, eyes scanning the corridor as though the walls themselves might lunge. We can't sit here. The longer we stay in one place, the more it digs into us. Elara slipped an arm under Mason's to steady him. He resisted at first, jaw tight, but his legs trembled too badly to argue. We'll move, she said, voice firm despite her own exhaustion. But not until he can walk. I am walking, Mason muttered, forcing his weight onto his own feet. His voice cracked on the words. He avoided their eyes, gaze fixed on the floor. Rourke snorted. Barely. But he didn't press. The three of them pushed forward, boots echoing softly in the dark. The corridor ahead stretched into shadow, lined with panels warped like ribs. Each drip of condensation echoed too loud, too sharp, until it felt less like water and more like breath. Elara glanced between the two men as they walked. Mason limped, silent, pale beneath the grime. Rourke marched stiffly, every motion sharp with mistrust. Neither looked at the other. The silence between them was worse than the whispers. Then the corridor bent downward, the floor tilting just enough to feel deliberate. The air grew colder, heavy, tinged with the faint metallic sting of blood. Rourke slowed, raising a hand. Smell that? Elara's stomach turned. Mason just closed his eyes for a moment, as if the stench was confirmation of what he already feared. Somewhere below, the ship was leading them, and none of them could deny it anymore. The air grew colder as they descended, the corridor narrowing until it felt like the walls were pressing inward. Elara's breath plumed in front of her visor, fogging faintly in the dim light. Rourke raised a hand, halting them. Hear that? At first, there was nothing. Just the slow drip of condensation, the hum of their own breathing. Then it came, a faint, steady tapping. Metallic, deliberate. Not footsteps, not random noise, a rhythm. Mason's skin prickled, his voice cracked low. It's following us. The tapping grew louder, echoing down the passage until it wasn't clear if it came from ahead or behind. The ship's pulse quickened in the walls, in the floor beneath their boots. Elara's heart hammered. It's surrounding us. Rourke's rifle snapped toward the dark. No, it's hurting us. Before Elara could answer, the lights sputtered. For an instant, the corridor was gone, replaced by a vision of open sky, bright and endless. She gasped, reaching out, body surging with hope. Then the sky flickered away, only dripping steel remained. The tapping stopped, silence crashed down, and then the floor lurched. Panels split open beneath their feet, jagged steel peeling back like teeth. Black tendrils whipped upward, snaring at their legs. The ship had sprung the trap it had been guiding them toward all along. The deck ripped open beneath them, jagged teeth of metal snapping up with a shriek. Black tendrils lashed out, fast as whips, coiling around ankles and wrists. Elara screamed as one wrapped her calf, burning cold through the suit. She fell hard, nails scraping the floor as the thing dragged her toward the widening maw. Mason, she cried, reaching out blindly. He dove pipe in hand, smashing the tendril across her leg. Black fluid spattered his faceplate, hissing and smoking, but the grip slackened just enough for her to tear free. Rourke fired burst after burst into the pit, each round sparking against writhing flesh. The tendrils shrieked, high, inhuman, too close to voices, and recoiled only to surge again, twice as many this time. Move, Rourke bellowed, kicking one back as it snapped toward his throat. Don't fight it, run! The corridor ahead split, the deck convulsing beneath their boots. Panels buckled upward, turning the floor into a jagged spine. Mason stumbled, pipe clanging out of his grip, but Elara caught his arm and dragged him upright. Another tendril whipped past, grazing her visor. For a split second, her vision filled with images not her own. Mason's face screaming, Rourke's corpse dragged under. She gasped, stumbling, shaking her head to clear it. Don't look at it, Rourke shouted, hauling her forward. It gets inside your head if you... A tendril coiled his wrist mid-sentence, wrenching his rifle away and dragging him toward the jagged pit. Rourke, Ilara lunged, grabbing his other arm. Mason threw himself onto the tendril, smashing it with both fists, his knuckles splitting under the strain. It shrieked again, the corridor trembling like a throat retching, and let go. Rourke collapsed against them, gasping, eyes wide with fury and fear. The three of them stumbled forward together, boots slipping on the warped metal. As the floor sealed behind them with a sickening clap, like jaws snapping shut. For a long, shuddering moment, none of them spoke. Only their breaths filled the silence, ragged and desperate. Then Rourke spat black fluid from his mouth and growled, "It's not letting us leave, it's steering us." And Ilara realized, with a cold twist in her gut, that he was right. The corridor around them pulsed faintly, a heartbeat echoing underfoot. Ilara pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breathing, but the adrenaline still roared through her veins. Rourke spat again, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "You see it now, don't you? We're not wandering. It's leading us. Every corridor, every trap, it's steering us like rats in a maze." Ilara shook her head, refusing to accept the inevitability in his tone. "Then we break the pattern. We stop playing along." Rourke laughed bitterly, no humor in the sound. "You think we can? It wants us broken, wants us turning on each other. And guess what? It's working." Mason leaned against the wall, trembling, face pale under the grime. His voice came low, almost too soft to hear. "Maybe it doesn't matter where we go. Maybe it ends the same." Ilara's head snapped toward him. "Don't say that." But his hollow eyes didn't meet hers. Rourke growled, jabbing a finger at her. "He's right, and it's because of you. You keep choosing hope when there isn't any. That thing you tried to save, what if it was the creature? You almost dragged it along with us." Ilara's throat tightened, shame flashing hot under her anger. "I was trying to keep us human. And I'm trying to keep us alive." Their voices clashed, sharp and raw, echoing through the corridor. The walls seemed to vibrate with the sound, as if the ship itself was listening. Mason sank lower, hands pressed to his temples. The whispers swelled again, almost gleeful, feeding on the rising fury between them. Rourke's voice rose, sharp enough to cut through the hum of the walls. "Every time you hesitate, every time you cling to some scrap of hope, you put us closer to the grave. You think that thing didn't know your name by design. You nearly walked us into its jaws." Ilara's face flushed hot, shame battling fury. "And what's your answer, Rourke? Shoot anything that moves. Burn whatever breathes. That's not survival, that's suicide with extra steps." Rourke stepped forward, close enough that the barrel of his rifle nearly brushed her shoulder. "At least I know where I stand." Ilara shoved the rifle aside, teeth bared. "You want to lead so badly? Fine, but don't pretend you've got answers. You're just afraid to admit you're as lost as the rest of us." The air between them crackled with rage. The walls seemed to pulse with it, the faint thrum of the ship almost giddy beneath their feet. Mason's hands clawed at his scalp, the whispers peaking. "Yes, louder. Break each other apart." "Stop it!" Mason suddenly roared, staggering to his feet. His eyes were wild, face flushed with fury and fear. "You're giving it what it wants." The words struck like a slap. Ilara froze, chest heaving. Rourke's grip on the rifle trembled, but he lowered it, barely. The silence after was heavy, oppressive, filled only by the steady heartbeat of the ship. And then, deep in the dark ahead, something moved. A slow, deliberate scrape of metal on metal, as though the argument had drawn their audience closer. Now their fight has cracked wide open, but Mason's outburst halts it just long enough for the ship to remind them it's still there, listening, waiting. The scrape came again, louder this time, a slow drag of metal against metal. Ilara tightened her grip on Mason's arm, pulling him closer to her side. Rourke swung his rifle toward the sound, jaw clenched, body rigid. "Stay sharp," he muttered. From the dark ahead, a shape emerged. At first, it was nothing more than a shadow stretched along the corridor wall, but as it crept closer, the light caught details. Gleaming metal, bent joints, a distorted visor cracked down the middle. It was a suit, a crew suit. But no one was wearing it. The helmet lolled forward, the cracked faceplate empty. The arms dragged loosely, hands scraping sparks against the floor. The whole body shuddered, as if being pulled by strings, moving in jerks, staggering steps. Elara's breath hitched. Oh, God! The suit stopped a few yards away, standing stiff in the corridor, head lifting slowly. The cracked visor tilted toward them, empty sockets staring. Then, with a rattling groan, the chest plate split open down the middle. Inside was nothing but darkness, pulsing faintly with the same rhythm as the ship. The walls around them throbbed in answer. Rourke's voice was low, ragged. It's not following us. It's waiting. The hollow suit stood motionless, its cracked visor catching the light in jagged fragments. The split chest gaped like a wound, dark and pulsing faintly with the rhythm of the ship's heartbeat. Elara couldn't move. Her mind screamed to run, but her body locked tight, rooted by the sight of something once human, reduced to an empty shell. Mason whispered hoarsely, That's one of ours." His voice trembled. It was one of us. Rourke raised his rifle higher, knuckles bone white. Not anymore. The suit twitched. A single shudder, unnatural, as if the strings that held it had been yanked. Then another. Jerking, stuttering steps dragged it closer, metal fingers screeching against the floor. The air thickened. The pulse in the walls throbbed faster, echoing in their skulls. Elara's breath hitched. Rourke. The chest cavity opened wider, plates peeling back with a shriek of metal. Something writhed inside, slick, black tendrils coiled tight, waiting. And then the suit lunged. The suit lunged with a jerking snap, arms swinging wide like hooked blades. Rourke fired point blank into the cracked visor, 3 rounds slamming home, sparks flashing. The hollow body staggered but didn't fall. Black tendrils writhed inside the split chest, wriggling through the bullet holes, reaching outward. Mason roared and swung his pipe, smashing against the helmet. The blow rang loud, metal on metal, jarring his arms to the bone. The suit reeled, but even as it rocked back, a voice hissed through the crackling comms. Not their comms, inside their helmets. Elara. She froze, her blood turning cold. The voice was her brother's, the one she'd lost years ago. Elara, help me. Her grip faltered, rifle trembling. For a heartbeat she saw him, not the hollow suit, but her brother, face pale, mouth moving with the same desperate plea. Rourke slammed his shoulder into her, breaking her line of sight. Don't listen, it's not real. The suit lunged again, tendrils whipping. One lashed Mason's arm, sinking cold into his flesh. His vision warped instantly. The corridor twisting, the walls closing. He gasped, pipe slipping from his hand. For him, the suit had become Cade again, face slack, eyes glassy. You killed me, Mason, the phantom whispered. Now you'll join me. Mason screamed, thrashing blindly, no longer sure who he was fighting. Elara shook her head, trying to block out her brother's voice, trying to see the truth. But the more she resisted, the louder the whispers grew, until the ship's pulse seemed to sing through her bones. The hollow suit stood, jerking and twitching, feeding them each the voices they feared most. Mason thrashed against the tendril locked around his arm, screaming at the phantom face of Cade. Every strike he made felt like hitting a friend, every glance twisting reality tighter. Elara's hands shook on her rifle. Her brother's voice begged in her ear, soft and desperate. Don't shoot me, Elara, please. It's me. Her vision swam, the hollow suit flickering between the monster and the boy she'd buried years ago. She dropped the barrel. Tears streaming down her face. I can't do this. The suit lurched forward. Rourke roared and slammed his boot into its chest, black tendrils exploding outward. One snapped around his throat, yanking him off his feet. He clawed at it, eyes bulging as the thing tightened, dragging him toward the gaping cavity in its chest. Elara's paralysis shattered. With a raw scream, she snapped the rifle up and fired point blank into the opening. The blast tore through the tendrils, spraying black fluid across her visor. The hollow suit convulsed, limbs flailing wildly before crumpling to the floor in a twitching heap. The whispers in their ears cut off in an instant, like a switch thrown. Rourke collapsed on his knees, gasping air, coughing so hard it echoed. Mason slumped back, shaking, arm slick with burns where the tendril had wrapped him. Elara's whole body trembled, her rifle still aimed at the twitching husk on the floor. For a few heartbeats, none of them spoke. The only sound was the ship's pulse, steady, patient. Elara lowered her rifle slowly, voice breaking. It knew us. It knew what to show us. Rourke spat black onto the floor, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. His voice was hoarse but certain. Next time, we don't hesitate. Mason just stared at the body, lips trembling, because to him, even now, it still looked like Cade. They leaned against the walls, gasping, trembling, the stink of black fluid clinging to the air. Elara tore her helmet off, scrubbing at her visor with her sleeve, but the smell was inside her nose now, soaked into her skin. Rourke coughed until he spat more of the stuff onto the floor. His throat was raw, his voice jagged. If we hesitate again, it'll finish us. Do you understand? Elara wanted to argue, to cling to the shred of compassion she had left. But the sight of the hollow suit's chest splitting open replayed in her mind, her brother's voice twisting through her ears. Her stomach turned. She said nothing. Mason crouched low, hugging his knees, muttering under his breath. His eyes never left the twitching husk. Every time it shuddered, he flinched. "We can't stay here," Elara whispered finally. "Not with that." Rourke wiped his mouth, rifle hanging heavy at his side. "Then we move. But wherever it's pushing us, we go ready. No more mistakes." They pulled Mason upright, his weight sagging between them, and started forward. The corridor ahead stretched long and silent, but the pulse of the ship pressed harder with every step, steady, patient, waiting. The corridor stretched on, narrowing until the walls seemed to close like ribs around them. Every few steps the lights flickered, shadows stretching long across their faces. Elara kept her grip on Mason, her shoulder burning from his weight. His eyes stayed fixed on the floor, lips moving in whispers too low to catch. She didn't press. She was afraid of what she'd hear. Rourke moved ahead, rifle high, every line of his body wired. He didn't trust the silence. It was too clean, too deliberate, like the ship was waiting for them to exhaust themselves before striking again. Then the floor dipped, subtle at first, then steeper, until they were descending into the bowels of the vessel. The air grew colder, metallic, carrying the faint sour tang of blood. Rourke's voice was a growl in the dim. "It's funneling us, down." Elara's stomach turned. "Toward what?" Mason answered, his voice barely a rasp. "The heart." The word hung in the silence, heavier than steel. They turned a final corner and froze. The corridor opened into a chamber vast and hollow, ceiling lost in shadow. At its center rose a column of flesh and steel fused together, throbbing in time with the ship's pulse. Tubes ran from it into the walls, veins feeding out like roots. The heart. And as they stepped closer, it shuddered. A ripple passed through the chamber walls, followed by a low moan that vibrated in their teeth. Black shapes began peeling themselves free from the column, sloughing down with wet cracks. Elara's breath caught. "It's making more of them." The first shape hit the ground on all fours, faceless, limbs too long. Then another and another. Rourke raised his rifle, muttering through clenched teeth. "We don't survive this." The first creature dropped to the floor with a wet slap, limbs skittering on all fours. Its skin gleamed black and raw, like something peeled too soon from its mold. It shrieked, a sound more vibration than voice, rattling their bones. Another slid free of the column, then another. The chamber filled with the sound of birthing flesh and grinding metal, the heart pulsing faster, feeding them. Rourke's jaw tightened. No time, he opened fire, muzzle flash strobing the vast chamber. The first monster's head snapped back under the rounds, but it didn't fall. It staggered, limbs twitching, then lunged forward faster. Elara raised her rifle, hands trembling, and fired. Her shot tore through its chest, black spray splattering across the deck. The creature shrieked and collapsed, only for another to land on the floor behind it, already crawling toward them. "Mason!" Rourke shouted. Mason, pale and trembling, scooped his pipe from the floor and swung wildly as a tendril lashed toward him. The impact rang out, bending the pipe, but the creature reeled back, hissing. Mason's face twisted in rage, every strike fueled less by strength than by desperation. "Back!" Elara yelled, dragging him away as another beast scrambled closer. But the chamber was alive now, birthing them faster than the crew could kill. 5, 6, more, peeling from the heart, spilling onto the deck in twitching waves. Rourke reloaded with a snarl. "We can't fight them all. Fall back." But when Elara spun to look, the corridor they'd come from had already sealed. Flesh knitted over the opening, slick and final. They were trapped in the chamber with the heart and its children. The chamber shook as more creatures sloughed off the heart, limbs skittering across the floor. Elara's rifle clicked empty. She cursed, fumbling for another mag, but her hands shook too hard to slot it in. Rourke fired another burst, teeth bared, then shouted over the chaos, "We can't hold them. We take out the source." Elara's eyes locked on the massive column in the center, the pulsing heart, veins pumping into the walls. Each throb seemed to spit out another nightmare. Her voice cracked. "If we kill it, do we kill all of them?" Rourke slammed a fresh mag home with a snarl. Only one way to find out. Mason stumbled forward, pipe bent nearly double in his hands. His eyes burned wild, hollow. "Then hit the heart," he roared, voice breaking. "Hit it before it eats us alive." The three of them surged together, pushing through the tide. Creatures shrieked, lunging in a storm of claws and tendrils. Rourke cut a path with his rifle, every burst tearing black ichor across the deck. Elara fired past him, shots hammering into the heart itself, thick flesh bursting, slick fluid spraying like a geyser. The heart convulsed, the chamber walls rippling in agony. The newborn creatures shrieked as if they felt the wound too. Mason slammed his bent pipe into one of the veins, again and again, black spray coating him head to toe. His scream was raw, animal, as he beat it until the metal pipe snapped in two. The chamber howled, the floor heaved beneath them, throwing them to their knees. And for a moment, it felt like the ship itself was dying. The heart convulsed under their blows, slick veins bursting, black ichor spraying across the chamber floor. The walls shuddered, metal screeching against bone. For a breathless instant, everything stilled. The newborn creatures collapsed mid-lunge, limbs twitching before slumping lifeless. The pulse of the chamber faltered, the steady rhythm breaking into jagged stutters. Elara's chest heaved, lungs on fire. She stared at the twitching heap of bodies and dared, just barely, to believe. We stopped it." Rourke's rifle sagged at his side, his face drawn, hollow. "Or slowed it down." Mason stood drenched in black fluid, his broken weapon dangling from his hand. His laugh came harsh, unsteady. "We killed its heart," he rasped, voice trembling with exhaustion and hysteria. "It can't." The floor heaved beneath them. A deep, guttural moan shook the chamber, vibrating through their bones. The creatures on the ground twitched, then jerked upright in unison, eyes blind, limbs spasming as if pulled by unseen strings. The pulse resumed, faster now, furious, and the chamber walls began to close, flexing inward like lungs drawing a final crushing breath. Rourke's voice broke the rising roar. "It's not dying, it's waking up." The chamber groaned, walls folding inward with a grinding shriek. Panels bent like jaws clamping shut, showers of sparks raining from above. Elara staggered, dragging Mason to his feet. "Move, we have to move now." Rourke fired into the twitching creatures, rounds punching holes through black flesh. But the things didn't fall. They kept lurching, puppeted by the furious pulse of the heart. The floor cracked open, tendrils whipping upward in a storm. One coiled around Elara's boot, yanking her down hard. She clawed at the deck, nails scraping metal. Mason swung what was left of his broken pipe, screaming, beating the tendril until it let go. "Go," Mason bellowed, shoving her forward. His eyes burned with wild panic, ichor dripping from his face. The three of them stumbled toward the far wall, where a panel had split just wide enough to reveal a jagged tunnel leading out. The ship wasn't offering escape. It was forcing them somewhere else. Behind them, the heart convulsed, its roar vibrating through the chamber as more creatures sloughed free, their shrieks mingling into a deafening chorus. Elara shoved Mason ahead, her throat raw from shouting, "Don't look back!" They dove into the tunnel as the chamber sealed behind them with a thunderous slam, cutting off the light, the sound, the air. Darkness swallowed them whole. The three collapsed in the dark, gasping, their breaths loud in the cramped space. Elara pressed her back against the slick wall, chest heaving, every muscle trembling. For a heartbeat, she let herself believe they'd escaped. Rourke slumped nearby, coughing hard, black fluid still streaking his chin. "We're alive," he rasped. His tone carried no triumph, only grim disbelief. Mason leaned forward on his hands, shaking so violently his teeth clattered. His voice was a broken whisper. It wanted us to hit it. It wanted us to try." The silence that followed pressed heavier than the roar of the chamber. Then the air shifted. A faint hiss seeped into the tunnel, carrying a metallic tang that burned in their throats. The walls felt closer now, pressing inward, the slick surface damp against their shoulders. Elara swallowed hard, voice barely a whisper. "We're not out, we're just deeper." The tunnel groaned in answer, and somewhere ahead, something moved, slow, deliberate, waiting. The tunnel pressed tighter with every step, slick walls brushing their shoulders, forcing them into single file. The hiss in the air grew sharper, metallic, burning their throats until every breath felt stolen. Rourke pushed forward first, rifle raised, each step loud in the silence. Elara followed, dragging Mason behind her. He stumbled often, muttering under his breath, eyes glazed with exhaustion and fever. The deeper they went, the more the air changed. The metallic tang thickened into something sweeter, sickly, cloying, like fruit left to rot. Elara gagged, pressing a sleeve to her mouth. "Something's ahead," Rourke muttered, voice low. The tunnel curved, narrowing until they had to crouch. The walls pulsed faintly, veins glowing just beneath the surface, their rhythm faster now, almost frantic. And then Elara heard it, a sound beneath the hiss. Not the pulse, not the creak of shifting steel. Breathing, slow, heavy, wet. The tunnel opened slightly into a pocket of space, shadows coiled thick inside. Something was waiting there, huge, unmoving, but alive. The hiss stopped, and the breathing grew louder. The tunnel pocketed into a low chamber, just wide enough for the three of them to crouch inside. The air was thick, wet and hot, every breath ragged in their throats. Elara's visor fogged as she scanned the dark. Shapes blurred in the blackness, but none solid, none certain. Only the sound, wet, heavy breathing, slow as waves on a shore. Rourke steadied his rifle, but even he hesitated. The noise filled the chamber, vibrating through the floor, pressing against their chests. Mason swayed on his feet, his eyes wide, lips moving soundlessly. He lifted a trembling finger toward the dark. "It's watching us." The walls pulsed once, veins glowing faintly, as if in answer. Elara strained her eyes, and for a heartbeat she thought she saw it. A glimmer of slick flesh, the rise of something massive curled in the shadows. But then it was gone, swallowed again. The breathing stopped. The silence that followed was worse, suffocating, heavy as stone. Then from the dark, a single tendril slid forward across the floor, slow, deliberate, testing the air like a tongue. The slick tendril slid closer, its tip questing blindly across the floor, tapping, tasting. Elara held her breath so hard her chest burned. Rourke's finger hovered on the trigger, his eyes narrowing, sweat streaking through the grime on his face. The tendril paused inches from Mason's boot, his body trembled. Elara reached for him, desperate to keep him still. Mason twitched, just the smallest motion, but it was enough. The tendril lashed upward, coiling around his leg with a wet snap. Mason screamed as it yanked, dragging him toward the dark mass that shifted in the chamber. The sound of its movement was immense, steel groaning, flesh tearing, the low thunder of something uncoiling after too long a sleep. "Elara!" Mason's nails scraped the floor, leaving bloody trails. "Help me!" Elara lunged, grabbing his arms. The tendril pulled harder, her muscles straining until fire burned up her shoulders. Rourke opened fire, bullets sparking off the slick hide. The muzzle flash lit it for an instant, vast coils of flesh wrapped in steel, rows of tendrils unfurling like a nest of serpents. The brief glimpse was worse than the shadow. The chamber roared. The sound wasn't just in their ears, it shook their skulls, their teeth, their bones. "Hold him," Rourke bellowed, slamming a fresh mag home. "Don't let go." The creature pulled again, Mason's body arching under the strain. Elara screamed back at the dark, every nerve on fire, refusing to let the ship take him. Elara's arms burned as the tendril dragged Mason inch by inch toward the dark coils. His screams cut through the raw and jagged. "Hold him!" Rourke shouted again, firing into the shadows. Bullets punched holes in slick hide, black spray misting the air. But the monster only writhed harder, its grip tightening around Mason's leg. With a guttural cry, Elara yanked back with everything she had. Mason's fingers locked around hers, nails biting into her skin through the gloves. For one searing heartbeat, she thought she'd lose him. Then Rourke shifted aim, his rifle's muzzle flashing as he targeted the tendril directly. Round after round hammered into the slick coil until it shrieked, a high-pitched wail that made the walls vibrate. The tendril spasmed and released Mason. He collapsed into Elara's arms, sobbing with pain, his legs slick with ichor where the thing had burned through his suit. The stench of charred flesh filled the air. But the victory was short. The wounded tendril whipped wildly, catching Rourke across the chest. He slammed back against the tunnel wall, breath exploding from his lungs, rifle spinning from his grip. Elara screamed his name as the massive shadow surged forward. A wall of flesh and steel uncoiling in the dark. They had saved Mason, but now Rourke was in its path. Rourke slammed against the wall, ribs aching, breath torn from his lungs. The tendril whipped again, pinning him by the shoulder. He roared, clawing at the slick coil with one hand while fumbling for his sidearm with the other. The massive shadow surged closer, its bulk scraping the tunnel walls, showering sparks. The air reeked of ozone and rot, the heat of its breath rolling over him in waves. Rourke jammed the pistol up and fired point-blank into the tendril gripping him. The shots tore chunks of black flesh, ichor spraying hot across his chest, but the coil only tightened, crushing his ribs until his vision blurred. "Rourke!" Elara screamed, dragging Mason behind her, scrambling toward him. He met her eyes through the flickering dark, teeth bared, voice strangled but defiant. "Don't! Stop! Move!" With a final snarl, he slammed the pistol barrel into the creature's flesh and fired until the slide locked back. The tendril spasmed, split open, and released him. Rourke dropped to his knees, coughing blood, chest heaving, but the massive bulk of the creature loomed over him still, uncoiling more tendrils, its roar shaking the tunnel walls. Elara reached him just as the shadow fell forward, blotting out what little light remained. Elara planted herself between Rourke and the looming bulk, rifle raised high. Her hands shook, not from fear but from sheer exhaustion, the weight of every choice pressing down on her. The monster surged, tendrils unfurling in a black storm. Elara screamed and fired, round after round, hammering into the writhing coils. Each burst lit the tunnel in strobing flashes, veins, steel, teeth, glimpses of a body too vast to name. Black ichor sprayed across her face and suit, burning her skin through the fabric. "Die!" she shrieked, every shot a prayer and a curse.